The district attorney out of Fulton County in Georgia is giving a timeline now for when she will announce whether or not she plans to charge former President Trump and others. It is as soon as this summer. I want to bring in Garrett Haake, who is live for us on the Hill. He covers all things Donald Trump and beyond. And Garrett, I don't want to give it all away in the intro. It is summertime, right? And the reason why this is so interesting is we should know, I think by Labor Day, whether or not a presidential candidate, right, running to win the White House will have 2 indictments against them or just 1.
And frankly, he could have more than that, since we know almost nothing about the timeline of the 2 federal investigations into Donald Trump. But yes, we now know what Fani Willis meant by imminent when she said back in January that charging decisions would be imminent. For her, it meant summer. She's now saying in a letter to the local sheriff's department there in Fulton County, yes, I'm going to make an announcement sometime between July 11th and September 1st. And based on what she called open source intelligence, presumably watching programs like this one during the New York City indictment of Donald Trump, she says she believes could be need for additional security. Now, she doesn't come right out and say there would be an indictment, and presumably there could be a need for additional security even in the buildup if she chooses not to indict the former president and perhaps indicts others or no one at all in her probe of the election interference down in Georgia. But we have that window. It's going to be a hot summer in Georgia. It's going to be a hot time in Atlanta. And Hallie, by the way, August is also when we're expected to see the first Republican primary debate.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, you could have all of this coming to a head at the exact same time with all the candidates expected to be in the race by then. Remember, Mike Pence said over the weekend, end of June is his deadline. So it could all be coming to a head for early summer this year.
And what's so funny is August is typically such a sleepy time in this town of Washington, Garrett. Not this year, it seems. Let me ask you, and I just want to remind people, right, of the multiple, we'll throw this up as we can, that sort of spiderweb graphic that we have of Donald Trump and the investigations he faces. One is obviously the issue that he faces with the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. He's been indicted now for basically lying about business records related to a hush money payment. Then there's this thing in Georgia. That infamous call now, right, to find the votes, that he tried to interfere illegally with the legitimate election results in 2020. Then there's the special counsel thing, which is, of course, related to January 6th, what he did around then, related to those classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. Here's my question for you, and I don't know if we have an answer. If Fani Willis decides not to bring charges against Donald Trump, and we don't know what she's going to do, right, will she tell us that? Or, in other words, are we on pins and needles until September 1st, and then that's it if she doesn't say anything?
She will tell us. Her office has made clear that they are going to make some statement publicly, regardless of what charges they decide to bring. They know this case has been in the public eye for far too long to simply wrap it up and say, that's all, folks, nothing to see here. But remember, in Georgia, it's not just Donald Trump who could potentially be indicted. This investigation has been wide-ranging. There's the so-called fake electors here. There's any number of potential people who could be indicted in the case that I think a lot of people close to Trump have looked at as some of the, perhaps the most legally serious, the most perilous case for him, at least far more so than the New York City and New York State case.
You hit on something interesting, the idea that sources close to Donald Trump see this as legally perilous, because politically, Garrett, and that's a mouthful, I can only imagine that publicly they will spin it as a potential boon to him, especially if it's, let's say, before that next Republican primary debate. We don't know when in August it's going to be. After the polling numbers that we saw when he was indicted the first time in Manhattan, he got a bump. I mean, we saw that spike in polls.
Not just in polling, in donations, too. It was, at least a sugar rush to his campaign, possibly something more, because that indictment caused Republicans to rally around him. But that was also for something that's, at least politically speaking, a less serious charge, right? This is something that had been widely out in the wash since 2016. He'd already run 2 national elections, with the whole Stormy Daniels saga being widely known. The Georgia case goes right to this idea of attempts to overturn the 2020 election results. It would be the first time that that's brought before a jury. It would be the first time it'd been brought forward in a legal sense, not just by members of Congress here, but in front of a judge and a jury. That's a much higher stakes thing for Trump and his allies to have to deal with.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.